In the current political climate, we are all trying to be sensitive and respectful and trying to be cautious about what we say and how we say it. And so, the only responsible thing for me to do as a podcast host is to do an episode on the only other subject in the world that is perhaps more controversial. David Toback, are you ready to talk about voiceover rates?
Always, all day, every day.
I didn't realize until just before we got started, but I the last time we talked, I was like, "Oh yeah, we just, it was like last year or something, right?" No, it was October of 2021 the last time we talked about voiceover rates.
That's a crime. It's wild.
It's a long time. So right out of the gate,
Yeah.
the GVAA rate guide was given to you and Christina and the fine folks at the GVAA straight from the heavens, etched by spiritual forces on
Yes.
stone tablets, a gospel for every voice actor to follow, literally as written. And
Archaeologists just discovered it was actually the
yes,
11th commandment. They just found it on a missing tablet, apparently.
any deviation from the guide, I'm sure the offending voice actor, their
Yes.
studio will short circuit. They'll never be granted another Source Connect test session from the community ever again. It's like
Yeah, those are the rules.
those are the rules that are behind
Yes.
the rate guide.
Written in stone on that tablet that they just found.
Let's talk about how we actually need to approach the rate guide.
Mm. It's one of the words. It's called guide. So I like to harp on that, is that it is a guide. And I think it's an educational tool. It's a foundational tool to be able to understand like where things are and learn. But I think it has to be taken with an inquisitive mind. It can't just be like, what's my rate and what's the term. Like, it's not an XY plot graph and you
Yeah.
find the right answer. As anyone who's listening to this, I should say, probably almost anyone who's going to be listening to this knows, voiceover is so complex. There's so much to it. It's not just like, if you're an on-camera actor, I mean, there's different stuff, but it's like day rate, and it kind of doesn't really go too far away from that. But like, we have so many different genres and so many different types of usage, and it just makes it really difficult. And then you wonder, oh, this is why there's agents, because the stuff is hard and
Yep.
it's not easy. And so I won't continue to go on, because we know I can do that, but I think it needs to be taken to look at. It's like, this isn't the definitive, uh like, it's not the union contract, it's not the non-union contract you have to go by. It's a guide to help you understand what professional aspirational rates should be, the rates that we want to get from our agents when they pass down a project, the rates that we find are valuable for the work that we do, the stuff that is in maybe the reason why, or the rates that are in the jobs that are attached to maybe why you got into the business of voiceover. It's like, you can have a fine career doing explainers and IVR and those other things, but I don't hear anybody being like, I want to be a voice actor to do an explainer video. Like, we want to get in for those bigger projects, or having a career that is very sustainable and significant, successful commercial campaigns, animation, video games, things like that. So that type of career is where these rates are based in that world. And our world is definitely fragmented a lot in voiceover. And so I think that means we look at these rates as that these are the aspirational professional rates. This is what we can expect is high standard rates. But you have a business, and if you need to negotiate, then that's on you to understand how to negotiate. And it's on you to understand all the aspects of rates and the genres and the usage, so that then you can do that negotiation. So you know what is acceptable, where you're being taken advantage of, where maybe, oh, I can do perpetuity for this because this is a charity and I'm not worried about this going, having any conflicts moving forward, and or whatever it is. So being able to understand your business from that level is what I suggest. And I think the rate guide is like the beginning of that, so that you can then now unlock how to run your business as a non-union voice actor. Essentially, your slash agent. Like I always say, you need to be your own agent. You need to act like an agent if you're going to run a non-union voiceover business where you're marketing your services, especially if it's going to be on the commercial side. And by marketing, that also means pay to play, because you can't just trust everything that goes there. And that's where I was originally. It was like, oh, that's what I get paid. Okay, that's what I thought it was. Whatever it said on that site.
We want it to be easy. It would be nice if it
Mm-hmm.
was easy. But there are just too many variables for it to be easy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
not only do you have the different genres, and then you've got the different usages, and then you've got different audience metrics, and then you've got some of those things stacked on top of each other, and it does get complicated, and so there are no easy answers. The
Digital, now
guide,
AI.
yeah, right? The guide gives us a, at least it gives us a frame of reference, because I mean, I can tell you, we were just talking before we came on about feeling old. This is going to make me feel old, but when I started, the guide did not exist, and it was tough to figure, like, I didn't, there was really nowhere to go. I think there was one particular pay to play site that had kind of a general card that was
Mhm.
mostly awful, but outside of that, there
Yep.
wasn't really anywhere to go. And so, I mean, voice actors working for 50 bucks or 100 bucks or whatever, like back then, like, you don't know what you don't know, because there was no standard, and there wasn't really a place to go to get that frame of reference. I mean, yeah, if you were in the union, there was the union card, but that's not like anybody could just go and find that online back at that point. And so
Mhm.
we've come a long way. We're very fortunate to even have the resource that we have now. And I know there are other, Gravy for the Brain has a rate guide, and
Mhm.
like there are other options that are out there, and it is kind of nice to have that tool that we can refer to. So tell us
Mhm.
where the rates come from and how often are they evaluated?
Those were also on that tablet that we just found,
Oh,
and,
so you didn't have to worry about it. You're just
nope.
like, this is the way.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like, "Oh, perfect." Um, so we actually have, a newly constructed, rate guide board, which there's some people that are, it's we're not sure if it's gonna be 100% public yet. There's some people that can't, like, but we have some of the top people in the industry, across agents, production companies, casting directors, just top end pros in the business. Even some, I can't name names, but we do have representation from an online casting site. Um, and so what we've done is we're getting all the people in the room, and that's what we've always done. But now we have people that are committed to an ongoing process, and it
Nice.
being a little bit more structured. Before it was like, hey, we should do this. Hey, email all the people that, oh, who should we ask this time? Or let's oh, we talked to this person, they had some good stuff, or somebody asked a great question, they provided some stuff. Someone provided me some things on IVR recently that I was like, oh, I didn't even really haven't heard of those, like these outbound messages or something. I was like, oh, that's a new wrinkle. So maybe it's like, oh, this person does IVR all the time. Like, we would love to have your information. So a lot of times that's how it was happening, and now we're moving to a little bit more of a structured, with these high profile people that were helping us anyways before. Now it's just a little bit more official, but that's really what we're doing. We're evaluating from all the people in the industry, and it's not just people that are at the higher level of, like, agency rep, or representation or management, stuff like that. It's also, there's one person who runs, like, an international agency that's, that they get a lot of, digital campaigns that are based on impressions. And agents don't get those, and
Right.
so it's like, well, that's a whole other metric that we're looking at. And we looked at it before, and I hope that we can solidify it, this time. But where there is like a impression type of scale, where, because that was a lot of, they're like, hey, we're only going to have 200,000 impressions, and it's really at the bare bones. So I think it's like where you're finding the projects too, like those types of projects aren't going to agents and management. um it's more of like the overarching projects, like OTT things, and I guess we can probably talk a little bit about those, because that's probably an acronym that a lot of people may not know. But so when it goes to those things, then it seems to be more on the agent side. But these smaller things that are just happening, kind of like maybe you would find it on a casting site, and it's not to that level. They may be doing impression count. Radio does that a lot, like streaming radio. So that's an area, it's really hard to wrap your hands around, because it can be so, it's an enigma. It's not just one size fits all. And TV and terrestrial, traditional TV and radio, it all followed the ad buy times, and they were all structured the same, 15, 30,
Yep.
60. And so um there was no other, like, methods. But now with digital, there's so many, it's hard to kind of wrap your hands around, like, what is the value of an impression for one business versus another. And so then you get in the weeds, and now you have
It
to start
almost
to be
feels impossible. Like, honestly,
yeah, it's like
there comes a point where you can only go so far. You can
yeah,
only right? You can only get so granular with it
yeah,
because there's
and
so
that
many variables.
and that's where it's tough because the technology and the industry of voiceover and the use of voiceover changes, and then we're the ones doing the voiceover, and it's like the way that people are using voiceover has changed, but we're still doing it on our way, but they don't really know our way because they're new and they're just kind of ignorant to it. And so then they're like, oh no, this is the way it should be. Like, no, but this is the way it is. I've been doing it for 10 years. And they're like, oh, we don't care. This is, and so you're like, wait, the the round peg isn't fitting into the square hole. Well, I guess maybe the other way around, the square peg isn't fitting in the round hole. And so now we get into that. Now what do I do? And I've gotten a lot of this lately. People saying, like, the rates don't match. Like these digital budgets are just nothing. And that's worrisome, and it's difficult it's worrisome for a lot of reasons, but it worries me because I feel like there's a lot of people that do look at the rate guide and the rate information, and they see that that's the way that it should be, and then they're met with something that is completely
Right.
totally different, and they're like, what do I do? And so then it's like, man, it feels like you're teaching people into a hole.
Yeah.
And that's difficult because it's the way, if you go and you're like, hey, ACM, or Atlas, or they're going to want the rates that we're talking about, and they're not going to do something for $1,500 all in, all media, 1 year. That the most likely, they're not going to pass that on, or it's not something that they really want to do. And so, what rates do you want to live by? And that's difficult, and it's hard to then manage your business when you're like, someone just had a project that's like, an event museum announcement, for some sort of Elvis thing or something like that. And $250 was their budget. And it's like, no, this is way more. This is a museum tour thing. And they're like, oh, this is what we paid. And so you get to that where they don't, their budget is unreasonable because they're ignorant of what the
Right.
value really is. And then you're doing your due diligence to be a voice actor and have a career, not just a voiceover service provider, is I like to and kind of have a difference between the two, where one's just
Yep.
strictly about the job and getting
Yep.
the job, and the other's the career, and you're doing the right, or in my opinion the right thing, going about your career that way. But then to find jobs, you're then met with the people that we're trying to say, hey, these are things that you need to be wary of, and then they see that all the time because that's what's available to a lot of the talent that are out there until they start matriculating up and getting different representation and such. So, but even then, like, people are still doing casting sites, they're still doing their own marketing to have a career. It's not to say that, oh, you get good and then all of a sudden you have a full-time career with your agents. Like, that's not the case either all the time. So it's a ball of yarn. It's like it's a minefield, and and it bothers me because I wish it could be linear. Like, man, imagine if it was, wouldn't have the rate guide, we wouldn't be having this talk. There'd be a lot of things there, but it is difficult with the amount of variables that we have to experience, and it's only getting worse, I feel like, as time goes on. Yeah.
Shifts up or shifts down or just shifts in general. Like,
Yeah.
are there certain categories that are being impacted more than others, or, new
Yeah.
categories being created because of new information and new opportunities that exist?
Yeah, yes, to both. So I think that there's don't let me forget, because but stuff that new categories I'll come to. The first things I'm seeing, definitely the digital side. I think budgets are much lower, and there's so much digital content that there's a lot of the lower budget stuff, and there's a lot of confusion as to what they should get with that digital, or what their digital is. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around digital content. Between, what is it, a social paid ad? Is it an online video? Is it just going to hang out on the internet? Is it going to be OTT or CTV? Is it YouTube pre-roll? What digital content is it? So we're kind of back to, remember back in the day when things first got started, it was like who, what, where, like, you needed to know
Yep.
the usage of.
Yep.
Now we're instead of like who, what, where, now it's like, well, what kind of digital is this? It's almost like if there was three different types of TV, and they're like, "Oh, this is TV." And it's like, "Well, is it local broadcast? Is it, like there's actual different methodologies of ads within TV."
Yep.
And this is the way it is. Like there's a social ad. Well, that's totally different than pre-roll, but maybe not. It could be pre-roll too, because they probably shoot wide and then they edit narrow, and now they have wide. So now it could be pre-roll, and then now maybe it's CTV or OTV, like where it's a streaming TV. So you kind of have like three separate areas of digital content. And so under the client understanding what those are is the first hurdle I've found. And a lot of times just like, oh, we don't know what the usage is. It's like, oh, we don't know what the same questions are being asked in different methods. So we had to always ask these questions about TV and radio usage. Now we're asking similar questions that apply to digital to try to figure out like, well, what digital is this? Because a lot of times they want the kitchen sink, and that winds up being everything, but they don't really need it. Like they're like, oh, these are social ads, but they say digital. So I think there's that the nomenclature of talent, and talent understands it more than clients most of the time, in scale. So I think it's being able to understand the information to be on the same. You need to be able to be a translator. So what are they saying? What does that actually mean to us in our rates in the way that we do it? Um, but digital is a big one, and I think around that the usage, and I think we're in this spot where people can be kind of giving away digital commercials just like we were before the rate guide and before rates really for regular
Right.
commercial, like, oh, $450, okay, where we don't really know, because we're not, it's so new, and there's they're not asking the right questions. So that's really one of the big ones. I think that overall, in a lot of places the rates are or I should say budgets. I shouldn't say rates. I should say budgets are going down of clients. They're trying to get more for less with some clients, but I have seen, less work overall, I think, um, coming through, and a lot of those issues. And obviously, I mean, we could talk about AI an entire podcast, and there's better people that know a lot more about it, but I'm keyed in a little bit, and AI is obviously something that I think is swallowing, the low end, the
Yep.
very low end of rate. And I've heard you talk about it on other podcasts, and that's just something that we've thought about for that was going to happen for years. Once AI started, it was like, well, you can see like this and this could go. Like,
Yep.
these are the areas that might go, and I look at it like kind of good in some instances. Like, should we be? Are you going to do a YouTube job? Like, there's so much AI on YouTube, and I watch some YouTube videos and I hear the AI, and I'm like, oh, that was AI too. That's AI, and they're utilizing it like you would never want to do the work for what they would want to pay you.
Yep.
So then
Yep.
it becomes like that low hanging fruit. So like, okay, like if I was never going to do that, okay, cool. Once we start getting into the stuff where, you know, like Artlist and even Epidemic Sound that have, that production companies use this stuff, they can just go get voices and they're licensed. That's where we start getting into some issues where real work starts getting taken away. Now, I know I've looked at Epidemic Sound, they actually seem to be taking care of the actors, and um there's someone that I recognized on there, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. They look like they're like, hey, this is how we pay, this is how we compensate, and there's approval, and it looks like they're doing it pretty well. But like, even if you say, hey, I don't agree with doing AI at all, or you say, hey, if you have the control compensation consent, like we say at Nava, then okay, cool. Even if you're down with it, well, now those are potential jobs that are gone from the pool that maybe would have been there. So there's going to be some shrinking at all in all areas, I think, but a lot of that from the bottom end. And I think there's a lot of that fear of seeing it being used and it creating more and more like fear and anxiety of like, is it going to take away everything? And so I definitely see that as are the top two things that are really I'm hearing about a lot. But most people, I get almost every rate question I get now, and we do like rate advice in the membership. So I do like 20-minute consults that are never 20 minutes, but we go over like the rate, their project, and so many of them are digital,
Yeah.
and so that I feel is like a real area, and that's why we're gonna do something about that soon. We're gonna do some education on that.
My
coming up in
favorite thing
May.
about that is when the client is like, It's only going on the internet."
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, just the
because,
internet.
the internet's so small these days, like,
Yeah.
only the cool kids with the AOL CD-ROMs,
Oh,
only
yeah.
those are the ones that get access to the internet. Yeah, like, the irony of that being that the value still gets placed on, well, to a degree, the value still gets placed on things like a national TV commercial, right? Like, those budgets are still bigger budgets. Yeah, they've
Mhm.
probably come down from where they were, but they're still bigger budgets. But the reality is that a Facebook ad could have 10 times the reach of a national commercial if it doesn't have
Yeah.
geofencing put on it. And
Yeah.
yet they're offering a tenth of what the budget would be. And so it is important that we understand some of these things. Now, you mentioned a few things. We've got pre-roll, we've got streaming, podcasting, you've got
Mm.
things like Spotify or Sirius, which are radio, but they're not traditional terrestrial
Yeah.
radio.
Streaming radio.
You've got your, you threw out some acronyms there,
Yeah.
the OTV, OTT, and things like that. Walk us through
Yeah.
some of those basic definitions that we need to understand. This is standard web usage. This is
Yeah.
pre-roll. This is OTT. Like, what are some of those basic things that we need to understand so that we can even start to put together some of these quotes?
Yeah. So, and I think this comes to the place where people that are in the buying industry of buying voice that aren't maybe too new to it, they're using these terms because they come down the pipe. And
Yep.
sometimes you'll see more of these in agent or like not high dollar but high production things because they're using the same kind of nomenclature. But
Yep.
um, so OTT stands for over the top, and CTV stands for connected TV. Those are two that you'll see a lot of. OLV is online video. And those are like technical terms that like the streaming digital sphere uses, and they're not voiceover terms. It's not something that, oh, this is what we've called it, or this is our nomenclature. This is kind of the industry nomenclature. So OTT, over the top, is going to be like watching like content that is delivered over the top of the internet. So if you have an Apple TV and you're watching Netflix, that's OTT. CTV is a device. So your Apple TV is a CTV, is a connected device, just like your smart TV. You get a
Yeah, I was gonna
Samsung
say, like, your
TV,
Samsung smart TV's got
smart
channels that are
TV.
built right into it,
Yep,
right?
that's a
Yeah.
connected TV. And
Yep.
so any device that connects you to the internet to then watch that content is a connected TV. So while they aren't the same thing, they're synonyms, they're like cousins.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yep.
okay, OTT, you see OTT because of a connected TV. And so you'll see OTT/CTV or just CTV or just OTT. So sometimes it's just the same thing. Like we have a definition that we use, but then somebody else uses it, and like, oh, we know what that one means. Like, oh, we say spot, but they said record, and we're like, oh, we know spot is a record, a record. And so that's kind of the same thing. So those are digital streaming, and those types of things are essentially, those are like the national TV ads that then just get put onto those streaming services. So good example is I watched the Olympics on the NBC Sports app because I have an Apple TV and I don't have cable. So I watched it on there, and I was like, I started seeing commercials, and I was like, oh, I auditioned for that. And I was like, oh, I don't see TV, but it was a TV commercial, probably had the digital stuff in there.
Yep.
And so it's really the same type of commercial that you would see on TV, because that you're essentially watching TV over the internet. Then you have like pre-roll, which is before a video. So this is almost most common for YouTube. So those ads that you like wait for the skip button to pop up and you hit the skip as soon as you can, those are pre-roll ads. Or sometimes they come in the middle, in the middle of video or at the end. End probably isn't so much, but you definitely have stuff that comes on in the middle of a longer video and at the
Yep.
beginning.
Yep.
So those are pre-roll ads. So that's a different type of ad, and obviously it's totally different than a TV ad or like being on streaming, and that can be targeted. And it's also, like, if you've watched any amount of YouTube, you probably have gotten the same ad over and over and over, and that's kind of the same thing. Like it's not the same as buying spot time on TV. It's all algorithmic, and
Yep.
there's no like, oh, David Toback is going to get this ad, 1,000 times. Like that's not how that works. And so there's really no way to really track that um without a lot of money and some integrated tools and this all other crazy stuff. um so then you have social ads, which would be like a boosted post at the low end. And then we can't forget about reels. And this just happened to me. Like I had to turn down a job for reels ads because the client required it to be perpetuity, and it just, long story. But this is one of the examples of, that I give. And it just happened recently of, saying no, and asking the questions and figuring out, oh, this isn't going to work, and then saying no. But those are social media ads, and they're still paid. And like you said, if it's a reel and they're putting this into ad, like as an ad, like, it can be seen all over the place. And so there's value with that too. So that's a totally different type of of ad as well, which has a different
Yep.
usage. And so, you'll see that currently in the guide, like things are kind of together. We originally had them separated. We kind of put them together as like a catch-all. And as things have changed, we're like, okay, this is different. Those are all coming, we're doing a current update right now. Those are all coming out separately, and then they kind of build on each other. So there's a little sneak peek. You can, if you get pre-roll, you get social. If you get OTT, you get everything. So it's kind of like an add-on menu. But those are the three types of digital content that we'll see. For most, those are for video, and then for audio, it's all just streaming radio for the most part. Like so, like Pandora, iHeart, Sirius XM, things like that.
Does
Um,
podcast fall into that too, like ads for podcast?
that's gonna be a question. I feel like podcast ads, like a lot of times, if they're done by you, it's kind of like the radio spot ad that the DJ does on the radio, right? That's like $50. And then if it's submitted in and it's done externally, it's like becomes an ad that they're paying for the time, and it just happens to run while your show is running. So we have to look into that because those are two different things. And then the metrics are totally different. So that's something that we're going to be talking about
It's
as
just something
well.
like I know some of the podcasts that I listen to, Diary of a CEO, for example.
Me
I,
too.
I
Yeah.
love listening to that
Mm-hmm.
show. Now he does all of his own spots,
Yep.
but every once in a while, I'm listening to a show that has an ad running in it, like a created ad, like I think like Lewis Howe's School of Greatness. I think every once in a while it's got produced ads in it, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, okay, well, how does that work? Because like that
Yeah.
guy's getting millions of downloads.
That's
Like
on my
that's bigger than any radio station that you're like.
yeah.
That's bigger reach than any radio station. So that that would be something to want to
That's
be
on
aware
my
of, right?
we're having another commercial review. Like we already started, and we have basically, we have a good bit done, and we're gonna move to wrapping that up in digital this next week. So we've been working on it, and behind the scenes, and that's something that's on my list. Like I have a whole running list of things that to add. People that suggest for the rate guide, and podcast is on there.
Oh, good. The internet created another category.
Yeah, yeah, because there's always been like the podcast. People ask like, "Oh, this is a drama, like an audio drama," and I was in one that was union, and just don't do one. It's the worst contract ever. The new media, it's like $120 an hour or something. It's really low. But I was in an audio drama. I was in like multiple episodes of this series during COVID when that was like super popular with the actors. We're doing
Yep.
a lot, and I kind of got in with that. um and so there's that, which we've always said, hey, just use the radio drama rates. And so we were going to essentially use the same rates for radio drama for podcast dramas like that, but create a section of it. But then it was also, well, what about narration? Because people get asked to do podcasts, like, will they be the host of the podcast? And it's rare, but it does come up.
Yep.
And
I've
I'm
done
on a
it.
roster that's in the UK, and they just came out with like a podcasting roster, and they're like, would you want to be a podcast host? And I was like, sure, if someone wants me to, I guess, so I signed up for the thing. So that is something that more people may come across as they're out there marketing and doing their thing. And then, like you said, the ads. So there's almost like three separate areas of the podcasting industry that voiceover contributes to, that we could look at. Oh, we may need to do. What about this and what about that? So that's been on the list to look at, as well as, there's several other things too
From
that
a
we're going to be
voiceover
doing.
standpoint, it's kind of nice because it feels like there are so many other new potential revenue streams that are opening up, right? Like just the idea of all of
Yeah.
these different genres and different places where we can sell our voice that didn't exist. Right.
Yeah.
Once upon a time it was basic ads and narration, and those were the things. And then there was
Mhm.
e-learning, and then there was explainer videos, and now there's web videos and social videos, and now there's podcasting, and now there's streaming, and like there's just
Yeah.
so many more places. At the same time, man, does it ever make it complicated when you're trying to figure out how to price all this
It
stuff?
does. It gets overwhelming. I think, if when you really look at it and you start talking about it, it starts to get over. Man, this is
Yep.
so much to deal with. And I always try to tell people, like, we have to be kind to voice actors. We have to be kind to ourselves, because this example of this podcast, like, this is always, it doesn't really have to do with anything that we're talking about, but it shows just like how much we do, and like how good we actually are at our jobs. This was an on-camera group, successful on-camera people that put together this cool story, and I just happen to know someone. They're like, "Oh, David's a voice actor. He could help us." And so then I come in and do multiple voices, and they send me the whole like kit with a Shure SM7B. I think you're using that right now.
I am. Yep.
The podcast mic, and with
Yep.
instructions on how to like minimize sound by putting pillows in the room and stuff. And I was like, I think I got this.
I think I can handle this.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so then I said, hey, can we just use my studio instead of what you sent me? They're like, oh, we're gonna have to check and make sure it sounds good. I'm like, I think we're gonna be okay. Um, so we get into the sound check, and they're like, oh wow, it sounds great. I was like, yeah. So we get into the session, and there's an assistant director, a director, a script supervisor. It's like we're on set, but on Zoom.
Yep.
And then the director's like, action. And I was like so thrown off, because never had that happen in the
Very
session.
different experience.
But I was running the session like, oh, so we're on page 34 now, right? We're going on, and they're like, yeah, so they got to feel what it was like to work with like a pro voice actor, but they had never done that. And they're like, hey, can you do like an Eastern European accent on this? I'm like, do you mean something like these? And they're like, oh my God, so like it was just a glaring example of all the things we have to do that like
Yep.
other creatives in the similar space never even dreamed of. And the fact that they were sending out the thing, hey, this is what you need to do: put some blankets in your room, use a mic that's dynamic that won't pick up any sound anywhere, like it totally was not in our realm. So we do so much, and it also means we have to learn so much, and
Yep.
that's where the value is too. We're running sessions like, do now everything is, there's no, now it's like, oh, home studio required, like that used to always be something somebody paid for.
Yep.
So we have to engineer, we have to know how to run Source Connect, we have to do all these things that most people, they just get to work on their craft.
Yep.
So that's a difficult thing. And circling back, I just remembered you said some things that were some new areas. One new areas for rates. We kind of talked about the podcast stuff, but one area that I think is really important that we're going to really change and highlight is this like all consuming like online video that is like non-broadcast, but man, that sure sounds like a commercial.
Yes.
So we have that, like, it's under as a web video now, and it's like $500 to $1,000, and we're gonna make that a little bit different in nomenclature. I think this needs to be like organic placement, or where it's digital, because like, Mark, you have an audience, like you've built an audience through the years of your podcast and your great work in the voiceover industry, and like you have the playbook, right? And so you're able to market your playbook course to your audience, right? Like you have an audience, and so that's what everyone has become online, is an audience. So if you're a brand, and so if Mark is like, hey, David, I want you to do this VO for my ad for the course, and I'm going to put it on my website and on my social media channels that have thousands, and well, that's viewership. Like
Yep.
you're promoting using your own internal network, your own organic network, but it's still promotional in nature. So I think really that's where I think there's a lot of money being left on the table, because there's so much video, and it's like, well, that people are using. Well, where does this fit? Oh, it's actually promotional. It's not going on like there. I think we're quoting way too much, and this is no one's fault. It's just the way it is and the way things are changing. But I think a lot of people are quoting from corporate narration when it shouldn't be corporate narration, and there's more value to that video they're doing. Sometimes you don't know, because you just don't know until you get the script. But that's one of the big things where I think we have an opportunity. Also, like, someone I just did a rate consult with 2 people actually for the same exact project. How ironic is that? They were the 2 people negotiating for the male and female of this project, and they both contacted me because they were like, "What do we do here?" Uh, but it was on retail websites. So when you go to Amazon and there's a video and there's like a video playing,
Yep.
and you can press video. Well,
Yep.
what
What is
did they?
that?
What's that? You
What
know,
is that?
and they said. Oh, this just this video and retail websites. And we're like, what's that mean? And it's like, well, how many? Because if it's selling their product. I
Yep.
mean, so it's like, well, if it's a video using my voice to sell your product on Amazon, on Target, like anywhere that may allow an ad, and so we wound up getting like per retail website they'll pay. So if it's like, oh, it's on Walmart, but now we're going to go put it on Target, now here's another payment. So it's like that kind of just happened while, was like, oh, I haven't even heard about that. I haven't even thought about that. But how many product videos are people doing that are quoted at $350 because it's a minute and a half video, but then it's sitting on Amazon selling someone's product? Like
I
that's
don't
like
even wanna, like, I just
you're like, that's
like,
it.
honestly, I'm like,
That's it.
this is getting way too complicated.
I'm
Like, I kinda miss
retiring.
the old days when it was just a basic quote and there was 3
Yeah.
genres, and it's like, because think about it,
Just
like
go into
you
audiobooks.
mentioned earlier, keeping track, you're your own agent.
Mhm.
You gotta keep track of all this stuff,
Yeah, now you gotta
but
keep
then
track of it.
you gotta keep track of it, you gotta be able to, and if it's a usage term, right? Oh, we're going to do it for a year. Well, you got to put it in your system that you're going to go
Yep.
back in a year, and you're going to check all of those websites and see whether or not the videos come down, and like all the hard things that an agent would normally do for you, you're doing,
Yeah.
and it's just getting more and more
Yeah.
complicated. And it's
It's
like,
like,
holy,
maybe we just start giving all of our stuff to agents, maybe that's like the new thing. It's like, "Hey, just start giving everything to your agent, and not have to deal with it." I mean, I don't mind, like, trust me, people aren't knocking down my door to coach rates. I think they should, but, I understand it's one of those things that doesn't get it's probably the most valuable information for someone's career, for a ongoing career, but it's probably one of the least likely for someone to be like, "Oh, I'm gonna buy a coaching session for that," because I get it. Like, I don't know that I would have either, but it is super important.
so when you're doing some of the social stuff, are you looking at the size of the audience that the company has on Instagram, or are you looking at how many
Yeah.
subscribers are on their YouTube channel? Like, are you
Yeah.
getting that granular with it, or are we just coming up with a number, and you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I can see where that could
Where's
get
the
into the
scale?
weeds too, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, this one's got 5,000 YouTube subscribers, but this one's got a million YouTube subscribers. That's got to be different, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like a national versus a local spot, or something
Yeah.
like that. So,
It
does that factor in?
It does, but it doesn't.
It should,
It
but
it
it
should
should,
it
but it
should,
doesn't.
but but it doesn't,
Yeah,
it does, but it doesn't, and sometimes it's kind of like yes and no, because maybe yes, maybe, and no, like, because you could say, "Oh, well, this is Home Depot," and then you can justify that, and they have money, and but then it could be, something much smaller, like, "Oh, we have 5,000 viewers," and you're like, "Oh, okay, well, that should be much less." Like, I understand that it's not going to be seen, especially if it's like the
yeah,
organic.
yep,
And obviously when you pay for stuff, then all everything goes out the window, because you're paying for you're getting the same exact viewership that Coke could get if they paid for that time. But if it's on their own stuff, then yeah, then it's like, okay, well, you're putting this video on your social media and you have 4 million followers. Like, so 4 million people are going to see this, but so then you're like, okay, well, you're broadcasting to an internal network that's bigger. So I would just probably be on the very, very high side of a range, and then be on the very low side of a low client, if that's a range. But 5,000 to 4 million is a big range for it to be like, oh, this should be $250 or 4,000. Like, it's just not, like you said, it doesn't scale that way. And so I think people that are buying stuff with like, I think people that have the viewers, they're going to get the most value anyways. Like, I don't think that the value should be taken away. Like, oh, so we should do it for $10 for someone with 5,000,
well,
and
because then the other factor in that is that you have people that have no audience who create the right video at the right time and get a
yeah.
million, get a million views on it. And then
Yeah.
you've got a brand that's got, half a million people on their channel, and their videos are only getting a couple thousand views because
Yeah.
of algorithms and how
Yeah.
reach works. And
And
so
I've
there's
walked
so many
through
factors.
going through like TubeBuddy or whatever the like one of the YouTube
Yep.
tracking things is, and like because they were gonna do weekly videos for like they were gonna be the voice of this channel. It was like an anime channel, had millions of followers. I'm like, oh, so you're gonna be the narrator of all their like they had like there's something like over like 2 billion views or something total. And it was like, so you're going to be driving the income of this channel. Like, so what is that worth? And
Yeah.
then they didn't want to pay anything. It was like, oh, per video. So it was like each video, like, and we wound up going to like $700 a video. And it was like, no, no, no way. And it's like, but like this thing just says you make millions of dollars a year, like projected, right? So, and this is your channel. So that's the thing, is like convincing people of the value of voice. And I think that's something that is going away the more that we have Siri and Alexa and all those things that sound okay, and they just don't, it just becomes part of everyday thing, and they're like, oh, whatever, like I want to buy it. But like people can't just go and buy a TV commercial.
The
Like,
other
like
side
they
of that too becomes when they don't like my number, then that's when they go to a
yeah,
Fiverr or a Voice 123, or
yeah,
name a site, and they post it for $50. And there are enough voice actors who
oh
are out
yeah,
there who will do it. And you don't,
mm-hmm,
we've had that conversation a million times in the industry, but eventually it starts to erode the
oh
rates,
yeah,
and it sets the bar
it
lower. And
absolutely does.
those rates may feel like, I'll be the first to admit it. And I mean, we talked about it earlier. When I started doing this and there was no rate guide, and I was a single guy, and I was working for rates that I probably never should have been working for, but I didn't know any better because there was no rate guide.
Mm-hmm,
And I was a single guy. My expenses weren't like my situation now. I'm married. I've got 4 kids. I've got a mortgage. Like, I'm in a totally different place. I wouldn't even have a
yeah,
conversation with people
time
about
value
some of the
money
rates
is
that I
huge
that I
for
took
you.
back then. But I was probably part of the problem back then because I didn't know any better.
Yeah,
Now we
everybody
have the rate
was
guide. We should know better. Like,
right.
we have resources there to help us know better, but there's always going to
Yeah.
be a
And
percentage
it's
who are
also
gonna do
right.
less.
It's the way that how you do business and the way that
Yeah,
you feel. And some people are just, and that's where I feel like I've coined the VO service provider. It's like you just don't care about anything else. You're there to try to make the money.
you're just
And,
cranking out jobs.
yeah, like they have a budget, you have a voice, you can make it work,
Yep, yep.
instead of it being like, well, this is so far out of the pale. Like, I mean, like I said, I turned down, well, it was 4,000. I lowered it because they gave me more information about the usage. But this is one of those where like, oh, we have a video for social media ad, and then it turns in it was actually 4 reels, separate reels ads. Like, hey, can we do this? Okay, 4 grand. Okay, great. Oh, actually, you only need it for 3 months. You don't need it for 6 months, like you told me. You're just running all of these ads for a total of 6 months, but they're 3 months each. Okay, so this is actually 3,000 now for these three. Oh, great. We so appreciate it. Oh, we need perpetuity because the end client, everything that we give them is theirs to keep. I'm like, that's not how licensing voice or music works. Like,
Because I'm
so
sure you're still gonna be running the exact same commercial 50 years from
yeah,
now,
right.
obviously.
And it's like, if you license, like, say you license a Beatles song from the Michael Jackson estate, because that's who owns the masters. You're paying for the usage of that, like, and you
Yeah,
don't think you get to keep it because somebody created a video with it in it. Like, if you do, then you don't, you're ignorant, right? And so
yep.
this is what winds up, and I don't mean ignorant in a rude way. It's just you just don't know how things
Don't
are,
know what you
are
don't know,
happening.
and yep.
And this marketing agency that I was working with, they didn't know either. And I spent like probably an hour on the phone in 2 different conversations educating them on how you actually buy voice. And originally they agreed to $1,500 for this one video, and that's what they wanted to pay for 3 social media videos, or 4, and they didn't even know that they needed to tell me it was 4. So this is what we're kind of come up against: is I'm the pro and they're the amateur, don't know what they're doing, and then they want their budget, they're forcing their budget onto a pro that knows what they're doing, and I'm having to educate the person that doesn't know to buy the thing that they need. So, and this is where the fragmentation comes because that $3,000, that was like twice what their budget was for this project. And they're going to go put that on pay to play probably for $1,500, and someone will snatch it up, like you said, and do it no problem. 4 videos for $1,500. They want it forever. And it's going to be shot wide. Now, all of a sudden, maybe there's a TV commercial. Maybe there's something, so, I had to say no to money. I already did the job. They needed it right away. I sent them the contract, did the job, like, hey, we had to delete your file. The client wanted this forever. So then I said, hey, 8 grand forever, because this is a charity. I'm cool. We can't do that. Charity has a $511 million operating income.
Yeah.
So you're like,
Yeah,
okay,
the
so
poor charities.
yeah, and I think I think I mentioned on your one of your previous
We talked on Free
Friday.
Advice
Yeah,
Friday, we got into that
and
idea, the
it's
poor
just like,
charities.
so,
Yeah.
but that the moral of that, it's not like, oh, Toback, poor Toback. It's more like, hey, like, that's what you have to do, because even though they're a charity, should they get that type of value forever to be able to do whatever they want with it for whatever we're giving it all the value away to the people that are paying for it. And that just doesn't happen in other businesses. Like, it's not going to happen with a plumber or an electrician or any other service professional. Just that doesn't happen.
I I
Um,
I wanna get into
so
this deeper because you bring up a really good point that I think that we need to talk about. And you mentioned the plumber, so I'm gonna go with the plumber. I
always love
had
the
to get
plumber.
I had to get renovations done here 2 years ago when we found out we were having another baby. We started another round of renovations, and I had to get a bathroom put in down here. I'm
Mhm.
a pretty handy guy. I could do a lot of construction work.
Yeah, no,
I
you took
won't I won't touch plumbing. I'm
yeah,
right, like,
no,
I don't wanna
nor
flood
should
my
you.
house. I'm not
My
I'm not touching
stepbrother is a
plumbing.
plumber, and he
And
says the same
so
thing. Call a plumber.
I had to call the plumber, right? Now, I don't have the faintest idea, like, not the slightest stinking clue what it costs to get a toilet installed or what it costs to get a shower installed or what it's gonna cost to have them because they're gonna have to tear up the concrete and run new
Mhm,
lines and all this sort of stuff. I don't know. It's not my job to know. I'm a homeowner. It's the plumber's job to know. And
mhm,
so when I call the plumber and he comes in and he walks through that project with me and he explains, okay, we got to do this and we got to do this and we got to do this. And he breaks down the quote for me and he takes his time and walks me all through it. And I'm like, okay, you're the expert. I got to trust you. And if I'm
yeah.
not 100% sure, right, I can call another plumber,
Yeah, get another quote.
have him come in, give me another quote. I think that's where a lot of voice actors are missing the mark because I think we have the misconception that because we're working with people inside the industry, producers, whatever, voice buyers, I think sometimes we think that they should just know all this stuff. And so then when they come to us with really low budgets or really messed up usage or whatever, we take it personal.
Yeah,
We tend to take it personal. We tend to get offended. I
guilty
mean,
as charged.
show me a day where there's not a rant about a rate
Yeah,
or a project or a usage in a Facebook group. Like that day has never existed.
never. That's
But
why
I
I don't go
think
to them anymore.
I think more often than not, those rants shouldn't be taking place because in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but part of my job as a voice actor is to be willing to have those educational conversations with these clients. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to get
Absolutely.
it. It
Yeah,
doesn't mean that they're going to agree, but that's part of my responsibility is to explain to them what my service is and why the rates are the way that
yeah,
they are, and not to just assume, oh, they're just stupid and they're just trying to screw me. And here's another stupid client with another
yeah.
stupid lowball offer, or whatever.
Mhm.
It's not like that, or
Yeah.
in most cases.
In most cases, I think to we tend to project. So something happens and it's like, oh, immediate reaction is like, there's no like pause. And I think my meditation practice, creeping up on 500 straight days, if I give myself a pat on the back. So I think that the meditation, it has that time between like receiving information and reaction, like, grows. And it's just, you're able to, like, okay, what is this, how am I feeling about this, like, is this the right response, like, so I feel like some of those responses have changed a little bit. Like, I'm able to take critique or
Yeah.
criticism or something. Maybe it's like, whoa, okay, it's not the initial like instinctual reaction,
Yep.
but I do get it. And I get that when I get a job from one of my agents and I'm like, you've got to be joking me. Like, what? And then I'll be like, oh, like, it'll get me. I'll be annoyed that this is a rate that is coming down through the pipe when we know that it shouldn't be, or that that rate shouldn't be something that is being offered, is what I mean. I know, like, agents have a fiduciary responsibility, and there's some, people that have differing opinions on that, like, if they should be sending out jobs that they
Yeah.
find are too low or not. I know some agents don't. Um,
Yeah. I've actually got one agent that will send us emails and say, if you see this job,
yeah, I think we have the same
don't
agent.
do it. Right. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
So yeah, and that's and that may just be a personal preference, location based. Just depends. Um, but anyways, we see those, and that time, and I just encourage, like, yeah, there's the whole thing was that people just get angry,
Yeah.
and because we think that they're trying to take advantage of us, and I think that there's a very fair case for that. As you know very well, as those that shall not be named, there's some things that happened in the past that make us very wary
Sure.
about voice buyers,
Sure.
especially from certain segments like with the online casting and
Yep.
all the different versions. I mean, people like, oh, I got this and it was on, it was on Realm, or it was on Voice 123, or I got it over here. I got, there's all these different areas that are there, and that it doesn't, it just doesn't play as well, and you're going to see stuff that there may just be a lot of ignorance on the other side where they just don't know. And
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity, because if you can educate someone and you sound like a pro, like we talked about the plumber, they come in and say, hey, we need to do a new valve here, it's going to cost this. Like, they sound like they know what they're doing because they know what they're doing, and you build trust in that person because of the way that they communicate with you. If they just come in and be like, oh yeah, it's going to be like this, and then you're like, I don't know, I don't feel good. So it's a really good opportunity to show your expertise, to show that you are the pro that can help
Yep.
them and work with them, because a lot of times, especially if they don't have good rates, wild rates, they just don't know. And I would say that's the first thing. Oh, they're just not aware. Let me be the person that can educate them. And so many times I've get stories, I've had it myself, where people like, oh, I shared the rate guide with them, or I told them about this. Like, oh, we didn't know that there was like standard rates. Like, we want to pay like standard rates.
Yep.
So sometimes just as easy it is for someone to get into voiceover, it's just as easy for someone to try to buy voiceover. So, the people that come in and they're like, "Oh, I'm a hobbyist. I love anime. I want to get into voiceover." And they buy a USB mic and they get on pay to play. And now, like, I'm a voice actor. That's the same thing that production companies can do. They can just find a voice actor, and they may not
Yep.
have the experience that we think they should buying professional voiceover, and we're putting ourselves right into that. We're marketing to those people that may be ignorant. So, like, take that opportunity to educate and take a step back, put a smile on your face, and be like, oh, would love to have a chat with you. I can, get on the phone with them. Brad Highland talks about this all the time. Like, hey, get on Zoom with them, like, get on the phone, let them hear your voice. Like, we're so afraid to do those things, I think, and taking that opportunity to be like, hey, I can help you. And I'm confident in this, but that does require that you know what you're talking about. And that's where that gap sometimes comes from.
I just don't want to ever come into a client relationship, especially with a new client. I don't want to come into that relationship with the assumption that they're trying to screw me. And maybe that's just the hopelessly optimistic glass half full guy, right? But
Hmm.
I just always want to assume that maybe they just don't know what they don't know, and then it's my job to help them
Yeah.
understand. And like I had this situation recently where a client hired me, new client, and we came to an agreement on a very specific type of project that I was going to do for them, because this is, 99% of what they want me to do is this type of project. We came to an agreement. And so then they came time for the first job, and we were ready to go. And so I gave them the quote based on exactly what we had talked about. And then when they sent me the scripts, I was like, wait a minute, these look like something else. And they're like, oh yeah, these are actually going to be this. And I said, okay, well, if these are something different, then we need to have a conversation about how those are going to be used and where those are going to be used. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Like, they didn't know, right? They didn't
Hmm.
know that there's different types of usage, or that there's different rates if it goes here or if it goes there.
Yeah.
And why should they know? Because that's not their job working in the, marketing department or the training department of a
Yeah.
private company. Like, it's not their job to know that. And so it's my job to be able to say, hey, can we talk about this, and do that in a rational,
Right.
professional
And
way. And so once we had that conversation, they're like, okay, yep, no problem, everything's resolved and we're way to go. But if
yeah.
I had came into that assuming that the client was trying to like backhandedly screw me by getting me to quote one thing and then sending me scripts for another thing, which is what some voice actors, how they would have approached that situation,
Hmm.
I probably would have blown up the relationship.
Yeah. And it's really easy. And I think part of the problem is that we don't look and see that, yeah, a lot of times they're just they're trying to get the work done. And in this case, if they went through an agent, like the old way, everything went through the agent, the agent would be doing that. They
Yep.
would be doing they would say like, "Oh, well, we need this and what's it used for?" And like, "Oh, they would be educating the client and
Yep.
helping the client." And so again, like I think we really need to look at it like we need to act as an agent
Yep.
and everything should be an open door. And if it's not going to work, like in my case, I educated with this charity, it was a marketing company, but it's, hey, that's not how this is how this works. This is, we had to talk about how you buy things, usage, what that would and wouldn't look like, terms. They said, oh, we need these for 6 months. No, you needed two for 3, 2 for 3 months and 2 for 3 months. That's not 6 month usage. So explaining, like educating them
Yep.
on that stuff. And that's exactly what an agent would do. So we
Yep.
really need to say, hey, we're an agent for our voiceover business, for our and that way we look at it like, hey, we're going to educate. But with that client example, I wasn't able to do it, and it's just like, hey, I tried to make it
Yep.
work. Came down, it wasn't going to work. Hey, I'm sorry, but I'm always here. This is what you should expect. I'm willing to work because you can see, but this just wasn't going to work. Like I can't have all the value be on the client side. And then you're able to walk away, but you educated, and now they'll respect you being like, oh, he has a boundary, or that's
Well,
what this is.
and even on that side, okay, it didn't work out, which I mean, that's just the reality of business.
Yeah.
Nobody closes every deal every time, regardless of what business you're in or what you're selling. But that client wasn't trying to screw you, right?
Right.
They didn't know. So you help them understand. Maybe they know for next time, right? And
Yeah.
so
And you can make clients like lifelong clients that way, because then they
yeah,
trust you.
yep, 100%.
And once they trust you, that's it. Once they trust and know, and so many times you hear somebody like, "Oh, maybe was that performance amazing?" Like, "Okay, it was just a fine performance." Well, maybe they were really easy to work with and really, and for people creating content, like we're a little we kind of get our noses up sometimes, like, "Oh, that wasn't, artistically that wasn't as good," or this, "I didn't think that was that great." Well, on the other side, creating content, sometimes they need to get the work done,
Yep.
and it's not always about it being an Oscar worthy performance. So
I don't
we
give
have to
those
kind of look
anyway.
at it both sides, like understand
Yep.
sometimes it's just getting it done. Like I always say, like I got booked to do work with Nike for e-learning through an agent, and I've done work with them for a few years. And unfortunately, I've heard a little birdie that they might be going AI, but um go figure. But the reason why I got that was because I was available.
Yep.
I was one of the avails, and I had the availability that they wanted. Had nothing to do with anything else. That just goes to show it's about the work a lot of times.
Yep.
And Mark, myself, we could have 5 people that do a really great job, and anyone would do fine for this project. And oh, David was really funny. He made us laugh. Let's work with Dave.
Yep.
You just don't know what people decide.
Yep.
And that's sometimes what the difference is. And so, yeah, I think every relationship is one. If you're educating them and showing your value, as that what you're doing, you will have trust. They may not use you now, but maybe they come back. And if you just run your business that way, you can't go wrong. Really, you're going to be in the right spot all the time.
So we're talking about education. So I think this is an appropriate place to go into what GVAA's got coming up next, because I think
Yeah.
you've got some educational opportunities around the rate guide that
Yes.
are coming down the pipe. So tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah. Thanks. Glad to. We're doing another webinar. Demystifying digital rates and commercial usage. It's going to be May 21st. So that's going to be cool. That's going to be kind of some of the stuff we talked about here today, quite frankly, but we're going to talk about some quoting scenarios, some examples, give a sneak peek of the rate guide, unless we magically have finished it and got it up to the website by then, which I'm not guaranteeing. But yeah, we're gonna talk about that, kind of give a little sneak peek on kind of some of the new things. There's going to be some big changes for sure, and
Okay.
I think we're going to be, just in general, we're going to be doing those things, simplifying, consolidating. Just as a little tip, like we're going to have just one commercial section moving forward, instead of the different like TV, broadcast, radio, like broadcast. If anyone doesn't know, like broadcast doesn't exist anymore. There's nothing being broadcast. So we're going to move away from that nomenclature, because it's just not it's not representative and it gets confusing. Like digital broadcast, it's not. So we're kind of consolidating things and making things easier to read, and that
Nice.
pesky thing of stacking things on top. We're gonna have a value menu of sorts. So that's gonna be something where it'll be easier for people to come together with a group of TV, radio, and digital or something like that. Where instead, I think that's a problem people have had. So we're looking at all those things, trying to adjust. But that's for the rate guide. We're going to talk about that. But in the webinar, we'll talk about quoting scenarios, basic rate structures, all these digital definitions and their differences and how to look at them. Like I said, quoting examples, and we'll have Q&A and hopefully a sneak peek. Well, if it's just out, then it will just be a review. But I don't know that it's going to be out in 20 20 something days. So, but we'll kind of give a sneak peek on that and go over it and answer questions and hope to provide some clarity on. I think what I've said, I think is the most confusing aspect is this digital world.
There's so many
Um,
variables there.
yeah.
It really it makes it confusing. I'll tell you, look, I'm gonna put in my request because I got you here right now.
Okay.
So here's phase, this is the next phase of the next rate guide. I want to be able to go in and put like a checkbox. Oh, the client asked for this, this, and this. And so I put a checkbox beside it. And at the bottom, it gives me a tabulated number. And oh, the GVAA just calculated my rate for me.
Hey, I mean, it may have thought of that. You never know. I have some ideas around that for sure.
Wouldn't that be nice? You just put in
Yeah.
these are the usages, and then it comes up and it spits it out and it gives you, I'm sure you could
Yeah.
write some sort of an algorithm and something or other for that. And
Yeah.
yeah, no
I
problem.
may have thought of it.
May have thought of that.
Maybe,
Right on. Okay.
it may be, somewhere
It
in the
may be
works.
something
Maybe
that's being contemplated. See, now
it's,
everybody's gotta
yeah.
go to the webinar because I feel like maybe there's gonna be a grand reveal or something, but
Maybe no, not of that, but yeah, there's always like adding value to the rate guide is something that I've always thought of that could be good. As
yeah,
far as the rate guide's never going to be well, I shouldn't say never because you don't know what can happen, but as long as we're controlling it, rate guide's not going to be for sale. So adding value would be the only way to get any revenue from it. So there's been some thoughts. We a long time ago we thought about doing an app, and it just kind of it was very expensive and time consuming at the time, and a lot of that has changed now.
the
So
landscape has
has
changed on
dramatically, yeah,
coding and app
time,
development and all of
yeah,
these
and
sort of
just
things. Yep,
before it was like we had a decision tree,
yep.
and it had to come up with all the different scenarios, right? So I have this flow chart that's just like this massive thing of all these decisions and what it would do, and we just never went through it. But now that type of thing isn't needed anymore.
Yep,
Like you don't need to come up with a decision tree. You use AI algorithms that
yep.
so yeah, so their technology has improved. So there's some possibilities in the future, something that definitely thought of. But with our new website and the new membership program and our streaming service on GVA on demand, we've definitely had our hands full the past 2 years.
None.
Things move very slowly when you're in a small business where everyone's doing other things too.
Yep.
And yeah, so it took a lot longer than we thought it was going to take. And so we're kind of coming out of that now, figuring out how to do things now. We basically blew apart the website and everything we do and just put it back together. So, probably wouldn't suggest that. In hindsight, that would need
Been there,
probably like
done that. Did it a
a
couple of years
full-time team.
ago.
Yeah,
Fully advised that, yeah, 0 stars, do not
yeah,
recommend.
yeah. Do not recommend. Talk about stress and burnout and overwhelm. Oh my goodness. But we're here now, and so yeah. But in that, like, I definitely would love to offer for the listeners, can definitely offer a discount code for our membership and on-demand programs. We're currently doing a sale right now that's going to end tomorrow of recording. So with this, it'll be the same. We're doing half off our first month for monthly, and then 150 off for the year. And then our on demand is like 15 for the first month, or it's usually 199, so it's 149 for the year. So the on demand program, it's all of our recorded content, our webinars, workshops, anything that and other educational stuff that we're doing on our own as well, that we're recording and kind of starting to go that route instead of everything being in a webinar.
Yep.
we have it on there. It looks like Netflix. It's really awesome. We have an app. There's an iOS app. You can just look up for
That's cool.
GVAA, but it's a streaming site, and it really is like Netflix for our content. And the cool thing that we just decided this week in our staff meeting is that we're going to include the Cup of Joe. So we do a Cup of Joe with David Rowe, which used to be public. We've put it into the membership, and we started doing Cup of Tea with David T, which is me, which is about rates and business and stuff like that. And we do, so there's a Cup of Joe every month, and a cup of tea every month. So it's every 2 weeks there's something that's going to be available in the on demand subscription now. It's for members, but you'll be able to watch those. So you go in and just hear me talk about rates ad
Nice.
nauseum, or the Cup of Joe, which is just weekly stuff. So, and the coupon code, I'll give it to you, but it'll be Marc Scott GVAA. We'll just
Okay.
make it easy.
So we'll put
And
that into the show notes. So that's going to
yeah,
be a discounted opportunity if you want to sign up for some of these GVA services. And remind me
yeah,
again, the date for the webinar is May the what you said 21st.
yes, May 21st.
Okay, so we'll put
And
that in the show notes as well. So anybody that wants to
yeah,
check that out, because the digital usage stuff is complicated and it's not going away. It's only going to probably get more complicated. So
yeah,
the better that you have
and
an understanding of that, the better you will be set up for your business for sure.
yeah, absolutely. And that's where a lot of I think that's where a lot of people that are coming into the business, that's where a lot of the work opportunities are living,
Yep.
because where they're getting them. A lot of it's coming from casting sites.
I mean, it's pretty much the
Um,
world now, right? Like,
yeah, and so and that is the world. So there's been that increase because you get in, and now you've done a little bit of work, you've done some coaching, whatever it is. Now you're out there on a site, and now you're getting all. This is where all these jobs are coming. They're not all going. The majority of these difficult digital jobs aren't going to the agents.
yep.
They're in online casting or direct marketing, and that's where the difficulty is. So yeah, I think it's something that's really important. I think it'll help to kind of straighten some things out. So it'll be really good. And of course, all proceeds of that webinar are going to um, fund the GVAA rate,
Right
the
on.
rate guide, fund the GVA, fund the GVAA rate guide.
Right on.
We do that all.
Well, David, this has been great. Thank you so much. It's always good to have a
Yeah, thank
conversation
you.
with you. And I am so grateful to you and Christina and David Rosenthal. I mean, the whole entire team for, I mean, the fact that you
Thanks.
guys even put this guide together. There's times when you've thought, looking back, like, why did we do this to ourselves? But just know that the
Yeah,
industry on the whole is
sometimes.
massively grateful for you for
Oh, well,
doing that.
thanks.
And not
Yeah,
only
we
for doing
appreciate
it,
it.
but for, I mean, it's turned into a living, breathing thing that is constantly being worked on and evolved to reflect the changes in the industry. And I know how much work it takes to be able to do that. And so we are so grateful for that. And thank you for coming on and talking rates
Yeah,
with us. I appreciate it.
yeah. Anytime, man. Great to chat. Thanks for having me.